Gentlemen, ladies, Adam here, and welcome to my childhood. For better or worse, we're starting with the Nintendo because I sold all of my Atari stuff in a garage sale, so I have none of it left. For better or worse, these are the only things I can for sure remember came from my childhood. There are some other games and stuff that I think maybe came from it, but I don't have any definitive things that I can remember specifically that tie it to being mine when I was a little kid, or up until I graduated high school, I guess. So 17, 18. But this is it. So let's get started. First things first, I'll start with some of the things that are really easy for me to identify right off the bat. Maybe we'll do the controllers and stuff first. First off, this Zapper Gun has to be my original because it's the only gray one I have, and I never bought Zapper Guns like out in the wild. I do have two orange ones, but I know they came out of storage units of my grandparents. So, and I bought the action set as a kid, so this has to be my original Zapper. And you know how little a Zapper really gets used. You know, how often do you play Duck Hunt? Even though you had the dual card, I mean, how often do you play it? So, this is the original one. It's in pretty good shape. The words aren't scratched off of it or anything. It does have some little surface scratching and stuff, but it's been thrown in some tubs with other controllers and all sorts of stuff, so it doesn't surprise me if it would have some scratches on it or something. But that is my original controller. And by that same token, this has to be my original Mario Duck Hunt game because it's the only one I have, and I wouldn't have bought Mario Duck Hunt games. And even if I found them in the storage unit, I would have more than one. You know, there would be more than one, and there's only this one Mario Duck Hunt cart. So this has to be mine from when I was a kid, by power of deduction. And by that token also, when I was young and had my Nintendo, I only had, you know, the two regular controllers for it. I never had a bunch of controllers. Now I have about 10 or 11 of them, but at the time I didn't have that many, and so you know, I just had the two. Well, one night this one guy that lived up the street from me named Jerry, I didn't know him real well. He was about 3 or 4 houses up, and actually I think he was in a grade lower than me, but when they moved in on our block, he had a couple of brothers and a sister, and he had some Nintendo stuff and things, but he didn't have a system. It was weird because it was like he had a couple random games and things, and I didn't ask him where he got them from, and that's going to speak to one of the games I have here in a second. But one time he invited me to come over and stay the night at his house, and my mom said okay and everything, so I go over to stay at his house. Well, it turns out he's going to some kind of like scout retreat or something on that same night. So I don't even end up staying. I mean, I stay the night, but we end up going to this scout thing all night long till like, you know, late into the night, till almost like midnight or something before we got back to his house. Well, when I went over there, I had taken my Nintendo and some games and stuff. So it just suffice it to say, when we left to go to this jamboree thing, my Nintendo is at their house, and his sister and brothers and dad and all that played it all night long. Well, during the course of this night, they had a cat, and the cat decided to chew on one of my controllers, and there's like some little teeth marks in this cord right here, right there, and because of that, I know this is the one of the original two controllers to my Nintendo, because of those stupid cat teeth marks in the cord. And I noticed it after I had packed it, because we didn't play it when I got back, and then he had to leave in the morning. They were going to Worlds of Fun, which is like an amusement park here locally. And so we just packed up my shit, and they took me by my house and dropped me off. Well, when I was hooking my Nintendo up later, I saw that cord had that. I was like, fuck! But I guess it's one way that I can tell that this was one of my childhood controllers. So anyway, that one is definitely from my childhood. I was probably 14. Same thing with this NES Max. This was my original NES Max. I've got another one that's loose, and then I have one that's still sealed in the box. I know this is mine because I primarily used the Max once I bought it. And aside from the fact that it looks really dirty, I mean, it's still, the buttons are good and everything. I had to dig these out of my controller tub. But the buttons all feel good and everything. I mean, it still feels like it would be in really good shape to play with. But I used to get so pissed at games when I was younger. And especially like Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania and stuff that were like super hard. So at one time I threw the controller and chipped part of the controller right there off the corner. And it's kind of a weird chip, but I know for a fact because of that this is my original NES Max because of that chip. And I'm not sure what game I was playing when it happened, but this is my original NES Max. And then this is my original Power Glove, or my only Power Glove, not original one. I only have this one. I bought it when I was like 16 or 17, I think. I had a little extra money from working over the summer out at my grandparents', and she paid me pretty well, but also I was working like 10-hour days, so I had quite a bit of extra money. So when I came back home, because they lived in a little town, when I came back home to go to school in the fall, I had money, and I ended up going to Toys R Us, and they had these on clearance. I think this was only like $25 or something. And I don't have the box. I don't have the box. I do have the thing that goes around the TV and all that. And then I think I showed this in the controller video, but I have the original Power Glove book. This is the black and white book. And I told you there was a color one. Well, I also found the color one. This one is a little more colorful on the cover, but then it's still black and white on the inside. So they show a lot of the hand positioning and all this, and the different codes and stuff to enter into the controller. So these books are the originals to this glove, and I do have the pieces around here somewhere. My cousin gave me this thing. I think I said that once when I was a kid. And when he did give it to me, he gave me his Nintendo at the time because it didn't work. And he gave me a couple of games. I remember Cobra Triangle being one of those games, which I no longer have. I don't know where it went. I do have a Cobra Triangle that's complete in the box, but I know that's not the one that came from him. So I must have traded it off or gave it away. I did give a bunch of games to my half-brother and sisters once when I was about 18 or 19, and I do know some of the games that I had from when I was a kid I kind of gave over to them at that time, and then I ended up rebuying them back later on. When my cousin gave me this, it was missing the like tray thing in the inside, but it actually holds like 1 or 2 more games because of that, and the handle was missing off the top. I did end up finding another one of these that has the handle and the tray inside at like a thrift store or something. But this is the one he gave me, and I do have one game here that I know he did give me other than Cobra Triangle. I think also Iron Sword, but I've got 4 copies of Iron Sword right now in the box, and I might have a loose cart or 2, and I'm not sure. If I only have 1 loose cart, that would be the one that he gave me. So anyway, let's see here. Yeah, okay. So when Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, it was a big deal. At one point, they did Happy Meal boxes at McDonald's, and I ended up, as a kid, getting a Happy Meal from McDonald's with the Super Mario 3 box, Happy Meal box, and I ended up keeping keeping it. I think I got one of those little Marios that suction cup down and he would hop, you know, pop up. I think that's what came with it, but I don't know where that is at this point. But it is pretty cool of a little Happy Meal box. And it's still in pretty good shape. I didn't actually punch the little dudes out of it or anything, so I don't know how old this is. I mean, it's definitely old. It says Osco Drugs on the front, and Osco doesn't even exist anymore. It says Ninja Gaiden, Mr., and then something's gone, and then codes. I believe it said Balls on there. Mr. Balls. Don't ask me why, but yeah, they got pulled off of there. But there's some codes written in here for different games. This game, I would have no clue what that code is for, but I would assume it's probably for Simon's Quest, based on that it's 16 characters, and I also have some other Simon's Quest codes in here. We've got more Simon's Quest codes, a Rambo code, and I don't even know if these actually work. These codes are good. Castlevania 2, Rambo, Punch-Out. I was looking at this one. It says 165807. I think that's that other World Circuit deal. I don't know why I would have wrote that in here, because I had a Nintendo Power. Castlevania 2. Evidently, there's a password here that didn't work, so I scratched through it. Some Tecmo codes. A Kid Icarus code. Couple Kid Icarus codes. Mega Man 2, Goonies 2 code, more Kid Icarus, Mega Man, Metroid. I wrote the Justin Bailey code in here, but I also figured out that if you entered like all of one letter on the top two spots on the row, and then entered all of another letter at the bottom, it would certain codes worked. I was, I guess, really bored, and I didn't have a lot of games when I was a kid, but it says like if you entered all capital I's along the first row and then all K's along the second row, it would be a code. I think capital K's, the O with a dot in the middle, and all along the first two, the X, the lowercase a and the lowercase m, and all those would be like your top two, 12 letters or whatever, and then the bottoms would be the K's. If you ever want to try it sometime, it does work. And you'll just have to come back and look at the video to figure out what ones it was. Mega Man 2, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 2. I don't know what that is. It's, oh, those are probably gauntlet codes. I don't know what good those are, because if you don't have the combination to the safe written down too, you can't actually beat the game at the end. And you have to go through all the question mark rooms in order to do that. So, more Mega Man 2 codes. Another Tecmo Bowl. Most of it's Tecmo Bowl and Kid Icarus and Mega Man 2. And what do we got on this sheet here? This is a sheet of Faxanadu codes, and I actually wrote little plus signs under stuff that was lowercase, and wrote at the bottom a little symbol that says plus sign equals lowercase, so that way if if the L's looked the same or whatever, if the plus sign was beneath it, I would know whether it was lowercase or uppercase. So those are, that's my code book, probably from when I was about 12 or 13 till, I don't know when, until it got full. Alright, these, I definitely know where they came from. This one here is my Contra cartridge. I never bought Contra new, and actually, one of my mom's boyfriends, my mom was married to my stepdad until I was probably in sophomore in high school, and then she divorced him, and she had a couple of boyfriends in the next few years, and one of them somehow I think he used to have a Nintendo or something, I don't know. But he gave me this game. I don't know where he got it, but he just gave it to me. And I was like, all right, because I always wanted Contra, and I don't know where he got it or anything, but he gave it to me. And he's like, hey, do you like this game? Would you want this? And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. This kind of ties in with this other loose cart game, so I'm going to go ahead and show this. This is my original game that I bought. The very first game I ever bought for the Nintendo was Double Dribble. Actually, I originally bought an NES Max instead of a game, and then I went back and traded the Max into Walmart and got Double Dribble. I wanted Metroid, but they didn't have it, and so I ended up getting Double Dribble because at least I could play against my stepdad or against other people, and we could play at the same time. So, and these are the original instructions. The thing is I don't have the original cart anymore. And you can see both the flaps on the inside of the box are torn off. It's definitely bowed out on the sides. But I had this since I was like 12 or 13 years old. What ended up happening was I took my Double Dribble and traded it to a kid at school, I believe in 9th grade, for keeps for his copy of Blaster Master. So this copy is from when I was a kid, because I traded this kid named Chris at school, and we in computers class, we talk about different things, and actually I think he traded me this game, but I think he also actually sold or traded me some comic books at that time as well that I wanted. Yeah, I traded him Double Dribble for Blaster Master. He didn't like Blaster Master, and I had rented it and played it a few times, and I thought it was more interesting than Double Dribble at that time. So I traded it to him because I knew my cousin had a copy of Double Dribble. Different cousin, not Joe, a cousin named Zach. And he had said I could take all his Nintendo stuff the next time I went out to his house. If I could root around in his closet and find it, I could have it. And I knew he had a Double Dribble game, so I knew I wasn't going to be out. I mean, I knew I would be able to get the game back. So basically, I was getting a game for nothing. But in doing so, I no longer have my very original first game I ever bought. Back to Jerry, the kid from up the street. I told you he had a couple of things that were video game related. And I'm not sure where he had them, because the whole time I knew him, he never owned a video game system. But somehow he came across Metroid. I don't know why he had the cartridge, just the game Metroid. I had always wanted this and never had it. And actually, I think even my best friend didn't even really have Metroid. He had Kid Icarus, I remember. I think eventually he did have Metroid, but Jerry had a copy of it, and I borrowed it from him for a while, and then finally he said he kind of wanted it back, and I was like, okay, well, you don't have a Nintendo, is what I was kind of like saying to him, and he's like, yeah, and I go, would you let me buy it from you? And he's like, well, how much? And I don't know. This could have been another kid's game for all I know. And I told him, I go, how about I give you $10 for it? And he was like, okay. So I gave old Jerry up the street $10 for this, and I don't know whether it could have been a kid, 2 blocks over's or his. I don't know, but it ended up becoming mine. So Metroid, I was happy to own it. I can tell this is also it because the sticker kind of started peeling up on this corner, and I felt obliged to try to sticky it back down with some kind of glue, probably super glue or something. And now there's a little bit of a weird wearing on that corner. And then I talked about this. I think I talked about this with Dead Thumb Gamer in a comment. He was talking about hustling somebody for a game or something, and I said, you want to talk about hustle? When I was growing up, really, I didn't have a lot of money to buy a lot of games, but they started selling games off at the video store when people weren't renting them anymore or whatever. And I wanted pro wrestling, but they didn't have, I mean, they had a couple copies of it when I originally started trying to save up to get the games, because I think they were selling for like $15. And so by the time I actually got the money together and went up there to buy the game, they didn't have it. And they only had a couple of games, but of course I really wanted a game, so I ended up buying this shit game called Star Voyager. And I don't even think it had instructions. It was just the game and the case. And I didn't know what the hell to do on it. And I still don't to this day, even though I own a complete box copy of Star Voyager, know how the hell you play it. I have no clue. So I had this game, brought it home, played it for like a night, and realized that it sucked ass and I wasted $15 on it. And then, so, you know, I don't know. I was just pissed off because I'd wasted money on it and stuff. Well, time goes by. I had a next door neighbor that lived next to me. His name was Eric, and he was probably 3 or 4 years younger than me. And he had a Nintendo, and I remember he had TNC Surf Designs and ice hockey and a couple other games. And he also had this game. He had actually this exact game, this cartridge. This was his. He had Double Dragon. And I don't know where he got it, but he had it. And I think what it was is this might have been that one of those games that the Jerry kid had and traded this kid, and then told him that he lost his game, whatever it was, TNC Surf Designs. So Eric had to keep the Double Dragon game because the other kid had lost his game, the TNC Surf Designs or whatever, and I'm pretty sure it was that same fucking Jerry kid. And he didn't like Double Dragon for some reason, and my cousin had it when I was younger, and I liked it a lot. But I came up with a plan. I was like, well, Eric, I said, I have this game called Star Voyager. I said, it's kind of a space shooter game and stuff. I go, do you like space games? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll trade you this game, because I don't think this was Eric's original game, and the reason why I say that is because it's got initials scratched on the back of it, but it's also why I know it was this game. I go, I'll give you my Star Voyager with the plastic case, you know, like that was a selling point, for Double Dragon. And he was like, I don't know. And I go, how about if I give you $5, you know, and give you the game? Would that be cool? And he goes, yeah, that'd probably be all right. So I ended up giving him that shitty-ass Star Voyager game and $5 for this. And it's weird because it's like, you think our parents would have known about this or something? Or something would have been said to some parent to where, you know, either they would have went to the Jerry kid and said, what do you mean you lost this game? Or that I would have, you know, she would have come over and said, hey, your son traded this shitty game to my kid for this other game that this other kid owned. But none of it ever got mentioned to our parents. And he never asked me for Double Dragon back or said that it was a bad deal or anything. So maybe he actually liked Star Voyager. I don't know. But I didn't like it. And I ended up getting this Double Dragon cartridge. And the reason why I know it wasn't him is because it's got CAR scratched in the back of it. You can kind of see it in the light. And that's why I know it's from when we were younger. But CAR, those aren't the initials for the Jerry kid or the Eric kid. So I don't know whose game this was. It's probably a game that the Jerry guy got from another kid, traded to that kid, and then got TNC Surf Designs, and then he did something with the Surf Designs and told the kid he lost it, so he was stuck with Double Dragon, and then I traded him my Star Voyager for the Double Dragon with $5. So, try saying that story twice in a row. Now, I'm not happy about this, but it's the truth. These 4 games here, I knew a guy and grew up with a couple of guys, but I knew this guy from 6th grade on named Don. And actually in 7th grade, he was my locker partner in middle school, and we were in about 4 classes together. And then in 8th grade, I think I had a class or 2 with him, but he wasn't my locker partner anymore. But we were pretty good friends. I was initially friends with him, and then met this other guy named Kevin, who became my best friend, through him, because they lived down the street from each other. And what ended up happening was, at the end of our 7th grade year, this other kid named Jared sold his Nintendo and 4 games to this to Kevin for like $50, and Kevin's mom bought it for him, and he had it on the bus in like a brown paper bag, and he was riding home, and he's looking at the adapters and the controllers and shit, because he had an Atari, and he didn't know how to hook it up, the Nintendo. He goes, I don't know how to hook one of these up. And I go, I do, because my cousin had one. And he goes, oh yeah? He goes, could you come over and help me hook it up? And I was like, yeah, I got to go home. But I go, where do you live? And he told me where he lived. I mean, and how to get, because I was riding the same bus, how to get over there on my bike. So when I got home, I told my mom I was going to go over to this kid's house and on my bike. And she was like, is your homework done? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't know if it was or not, but I was like, yeah. And so she's like, okay, you can go. So I rode over there, and I hooked this system up for the kid, Kevin. And like I said, I believe the 4 games, I know for a fact 3 of them, but I believe it was 4 games. It was Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Ghosts and Goblins, and I think Kid Icarus. Those were the 4 games that the kid owned that sold it to him and that he got with it. And I knew how to play Super Mario Brothers, so we got it hooked up, stuck Super Mario Brothers in for, not very long. And then we wanted to play Zelda because it was in the gold cartridge and all that. And we, of course, couldn't find the sword at first, died almost immediately, didn't know what the hell we were doing. There was no score. It wasn't a side-scroller. I mean, all of us were completely confused by it. And, I said, this was close to the end of the school year, and, I think I borrowed a couple Atari games from him because he had his Nintendo, and he's like, yeah, you can borrow some of those Atari games. And I borrowed them from him, and then I think I brought them back a few days later on my bike and gave them back to him. And then I think it was summertime, and I went out to stay with my family and stuff for the summer, and didn't see this kid again till the next year we started school. Well, what ended up happening was old Don failed 7th grade. Yeah, great. This kid, I don't know, he ended up failing 7th grade. So Kevin and I were in 8th grade, and Don was in 7th grade. So him and I kind of became better friends because of this, and I started going over to his house all the time, and that's when we really started getting into Nintendo and stuff, and I would go over there every day. I would just started riding the school bus home after school to his house, and then walking home from there, or whatever, I mean, it just was like crazy. But Don kind of fell to the wayside for both of us. I mean, we used to be pretty good friends with him, but he was still a part of our lives, but he was a grade behind us and stuff. And occasionally he would come down and stay, and we'd have it like 2 or 3 people would stay at Kevin's house or something, and we'd play games and shit. And Don had a Nintendo and had quite a few games and stuff, but the dude he didn't take care of his shit. He would forget where things were. He wouldn't even remember things. I loaned him my Ninja Gaiden game at one point for one of his games, I think Batman. And he took it over to his sister's house and left it there for months. I mean, like 6 months. And I wanted my Ninja Gaiden game back, and I couldn't get it back from him because it was over at his sister's house for like months and months. And I don't know, he just was very careless with his shit. And because of this, at some point he had a case carrier similar to that one that's over there that my cousin gave me with a bunch of games in it, and he left it at Kevin's house. And Kevin and I ended up I think we ended up taking a few of the carts apart, like tearing the shit out of them, and to see the chipboards inside and see what they actually look like, because we had never taken any of the games apart. I mean, like his Super Mario Brothers and stuff. But there were there was a few games that I didn't own, and a few games that Kevin didn't own, and basically we were like, well, Don didn't even remember where they were. I mean, I think at one point asked Kevin if he knew where they were, and he goes, because we had torn a bunch of them up, was like, I don't know. And Don's like, I don't know where that shit went. It must be at my house, because their house was a fucking sty. I mean, his mom was like 400 pounds and never did any housework, and their house was just trashed. I mean, you couldn't find anything in it. And, I mean, his room was horrible. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it was just horrible. Their house smelled like fucking cat and dog, cat piss and dog, from the cat litter box being full all the time, and the dog, and I mean, it's just, the dude didn't take care of his stuff. I mean, I don't know. I love the guy back in the day. He was a good friend of mine, but he just was not a very cleanly guy, and not a very aware person. So anyway, what ended up happening was Kevin ended up keeping a few of his games, and he ended up giving me some of them and said, just keep them, because he's not even going to remember that. He doesn't even remember where they went, And back in the day, I didn't have a lot of money, and these were good titles, so I wasn't going to, say no. But now I kind of feel bad in my older age that I kept these. So, Don, if you're watching, I mean, sorry about what I just said, but you can't say it wasn't true. But if you want these games back, you can have them back, buddy. These 4 games here, Rygar, Goonies 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then a copy of Zelda 2, which this one was the big deal. And it's, some of the gold's flaking off. That's what I'm saying. He didn't take real good care of his shit. So the gold's flaking off the cartridge and shit, because he didn't even keep it in the case. That kind of stuff. But these games were Don's, and now they're mine. And it's because Kevin was like, oh, fuck it, keep them, And at the time I was like, yeah, fuck them, I mean, it was kind of my attitude. So I hate to say it, but that, and also this was Don's. The official Nintendo Player's Guide. Kevin had one, and Don had left it at his house, and he was like, take this too, because I didn't have one, and he already had one. And, I always wanted one, but they were, I forget how much they even cost. It doesn't even say on it how much it actually cost, which is kind of strange. There's no price, on it. Maybe on the inside cover. No. Nope. But anyway, this was his. So these stickers that are on it are because he put them on there. So far, you've seen a kid be a kid be an asshole, a kid hustle somebody, and a kid make trades, permanent trades. Now it's time to see the games. The ones that I know were mine from when I was a kid. I sold a bunch in a garage sale. A copy of, I'm going to take that hat off. Copy of Kid Icarus. Not Kid Icarus. I sold a copy of Major League Baseball, Bad Dudes, Karate Kid, and I'm trying to think. I thought there was one other one that I sold in the garage sale. I know I sold those 3, and there were some other ones that I tried to sell, and they just didn't sell. Let's see. I've got some stories for some of these. Some of them I don't really have stories for. We'll start with, I don't know, there's no real order, so I'm going to start like this. This Street Fighter 2010, is my original one. I bought this when I bought the Power Glove, when I was like 16 or 17. This game is hard as hell. You may have seen the Angry Video Game Nerd video on it about at the end how you have to hit all the power-ups in a time limit, not run out of health, and beat it all. It's like a perfect symphony, coming together in order to beat it. I have beaten this game. I don't know if I have the free sticker inside. I guess we could look. I wasn't going to pull all of these out of the case, out of the boxes, but we can look and see if the Mega Man sticker is in here. I don't think it is, though. No, just the instructions in the game. But this is the original cart and instructions. Who knows what happened to the Mega Man sticker, but it is no longer in the box. So, Street Fighter. That game, I actually played that game, and the reason why I ended up buying it was I played that game at the Nintendo Power Players Convention that came through town. I think it was like in 90 or 91. And yeah, also I guess this is from my childhood. And I've talked about this before. This Mario doll came from the Nintendo Power Players Convention. They were giving away at the door. They were just kind of tossing them to you as you were coming in. And the dude tossed me one. It was like a DJ or something for a local radio station, but he was throwing it. As I was coming in, he goes, "Woo!" and goes, "Heads up, woo!" and threw it to me. And I was like, all right, So I carried this thing around the whole time. My buddy did the little competition where you did the Mario, Rad Racer, and Tetris, and I think you had to pay a couple of bucks to do it. There was like an entry fee. I didn't have any money. He actually took me with him. I don't remember if his mom paid for my ticket or whatever, but I didn't have any money. I mean, my mom might have given me money to get a soda or a sandwich or something, but I didn't have any money to do anything or buy anything there. So I spent a lot of time walking around looking at things, especially when he was waiting in line to do his turn. At the thing, and I think there was like a big screen you would get up in front of, and everybody could see you do it. And I hate to say, but I actually didn't even watch him do it because I was busy doing other things. But one of the games that really intrigued me at the Power Player Convention was Street Fighter 2010. And I remember sitting there playing it at the kiosks thing and being like, this is a really cool game. I might have to get this when it comes out. And it came out, and I didn't get it right away. After it came out, but then about a year or so later, I had some money, and it was still, they're still selling it in the store, so I went ahead and bought it. Here's a quick one that I can do. I know for a fact. I don't know why I put it in the box back, or in the case thing backwards, but this game here, Astyanax. I got this for Christmas. It's not a very good game. And at one point, I cut the proof of purchase out of the box, and I actually used it on a school project. I needed a UPC symbol, and I had taped it or glued it on to a school project for a creative writing class. When I was rooting through my closet recently, I found that, and I saw that on there, and I pulled it back off, and I have taped it onto the back of the box. I don't care if it's taped on there because I know why it's taped on there, because I pulled it off of there originally back in 11th grade. Like I said, this game is not great, but it is from my childhood. Let's see here. I think I have a bit of a... Yeah, I do. I think I may have told this story before, but Strider. This was my original Strider. I do have another copy that's in a better shape than this one, but this is my original, and the reason why I know it's my original is because it's in worse shape. Both of the tabs are torn off the box. The box has been crushed on basically all sides. But I still have the box. I do have the directions and the game. This is the game that I ordered when my buddy ordered his original Dragon Warrior, and we ordered them from a mail order company. I remember Strider was going to be coming out, and I loved it at the arcade. And, you know, I thought it was going to be more like the what ended up being the Sega Genesis one. But we got them, and we ordered them from this mail order company. That was the summer my buddy got hit by a car on his bike early on in the summer, so he was laid up most of the summer, and that was the Mega Man 2 story I told, where I beat Mega Man, the end boss of Mega Man 2, and he was totally pissed. Well, later that summer, he bought Dragon Warrior. He originally wanted Ultimate Exodus, and we played the shit out of Ultimate Exodus growing up. And he kept trying to order from this company. It kept being out of stock. But then they said, you know, it's out of stock, but there's this new game coming out called Dragon Warrior. And they said it's very similar in most regards as far as like the style of game. It's a role-playing game and da-da-da. They talked him into getting Dragon Warrior, which was not a bad game. Long story short, we got these games in the mail. We immediately started playing Strider because we knew Dragon Warrior was like more of a role-playing game, and it was going to take more time. So Strider was more of an action game. So we were like, all right. Well, what ended up happening is we got about 2/3 of the way through this game in like an hour or two. I mean, we were like almost, you know, 2/3 of the way through it. And my buddy originally, before we even stuck the Dragon Warrior in, goes, you know, because I was kind of pissed that it was so easy. He goes, I kind of like this. He goes, you want to just trade and you can take Dragon Warrior and I'll take this? And I go, you know, that's cool. And then we stuck Dragon Warrior in, and once he started playing that, he's like, no, I don't want to trade anymore. And I was like, yeah, I understand. You know, because I was the same way. I was like, man, I really got kind of rooked. And for a long time, I thought Capcom games, and I still do kind of think it, were easier than other games, like Strider, Mega Man 2. I thought they were easier games. I mean, I told you, I beat the end boss on Mega Man 2 before I even really played the game. So, Tecmo and a couple other companies were ones I thought were really freaking hard for the most part. So, this Strider game, I ended up taking it down that summer to my grandparents, because I used to go down to my grandparents in Oklahoma for summers for a couple of weeks. I remember beating it finally down there, you know, a couple of weeks later, a few weeks later. But yeah, this is my original Strider game, instructions and box. Let's see how... Dragon Warrior 2, this is one that I bought like when I was like 17 or 8. I was a senior in high school. I never owned Dragon Warrior 1, but I was at Toys R Us, and they had them, Dragon Warrior 2s for $20, and I never had the first one, and they didn't have the first one anymore, but they had Dragon Warrior 2, and I knew there was like you had 3 people in your party and stuff, and it was more like Ultimate Exodus or Final Fantasy than Dragon Warrior 1, so I went ahead and bought a copy, and this is my original, and there is I can see a scuff scratch on the back of the box. Box has some minor crushing on this side, but there's a scratch over this girl's face here. I think I've got all of the goodies for this in here, though. The game, which I don't know, it still may have my original game save on it if it's still held this long. The instruction book, and then it has a map. That's starting to wear in spots. And I taped it at one point, evidently, because I can see tape all the way across the back there. It looks like maybe I even cut that bottom. I think what it is I cut that bottom part off that had the questions, like basically walkthrough shit. I cut that off and left it in the bottom of the box until I beat the game, and then it looks like I taped it back together. So, this is my Dragon Warrior from when I was like 17 or 18 years old. Faxanadu. This game I kind of bought on a whim. I didn't know a whole lot about it, and what happened was I went down to my grandparents. Like I said, I used to go down there summers. Well, I think this was the summer after. It might have been the same summer as the Strider game. My grandfather would try to figure out ways to basically buy us things without just flat out buying them. Because my grandmother would be like, well, you're spoiling them or you're going overboard. So I would mow their yard while I was down there, and he would give me money to mow the yard. Well, I ended up, he kept the yard so short he wanted it mowed like every other day, or every 3 days or something. I was only down there for like 2 weeks, but I think I mowed his yard like 3 or 4 times. And it wasn't even that big of a yard, but I think he gave me like $10, $10 or $15 each time I mowed it. And I ended up going out with him to, I believe it was Target. At that time, Target didn't even exist up here in Missouri yet. To a Target and bought Faxanadu with the money that he, I think he might have just bought me the game instead of giving me the money. And I remember getting it down there. I did beat this game a few times, and I did try to sell it in the garage sale because it's got tape at the top. But nobody bought it, and I'm kind of glad nobody did because I still have it to this day. Let me see. Come on. And then we have the original instruction book and game. The game's in really pretty good shape. The label's not really worn or anything. And the instructions are in good shape. They're a little used, but not too bad. And, I beat this game a few times, and those codes and stuff are probably from when I was playing this copy. Because I never rented it or anything. I bought it when it was basically brand new. Let's see here. I got 4 games left. And my neck's starting to hurt. Ugh. Why am I getting old? Why is everybody getting old? This game here, Ultima Warriors of Destiny, it was brand new. My buddy Kevin, our senior year in high school, I had went down to my aunt's house, and we had went out and rented some games. And we ended up renting Dragon Warrior 4. And at this point, we weren't super into Nintendo. It kind of, our senior year in high school, you were kind of not doing the. I wasn't even really hanging out with him that much anymore. But here and there, because I had moved and we lived farther apart, and I couldn't just go over there. And then, when we got old enough that he had a car, and I ended up getting in a car accident when I was 16, and I just didn't like driving, so I didn't have my license until I was like 19. And so I basically was kind of on my own, so to speak. But there are a few times when I went over to his house, and I told him about Dragon Warrior 4 after I had rented it and played it, and told him how cool it was. You had this party, and you basically had this wagon with this ton of people that would follow you around, and all the different things you could do. And he ended up buying Dragon Warrior 4, and I don't know why, but like shortly after that, he bought Ultima Warriors of Destiny. And what it was is he thought that the Warriors of Destiny was going to be more like a Quest of the Avatar or something, but it's different in the fact that everything's like almost like real, to scale. So the town is as big for real as it would be. It's not like you walked into a little icon of a town and then suddenly the town was real big. And I don't know, he just didn't dig it. He dug the Dragon Warrior 4, and he had let me borrow this. And it was close to the end of our senior year in high school. And I ended up, shortly after high school, moving from Independence to Lee Summit, Missouri, which is about 20 miles from where I previously lived. And I had some of his games. I had Kings of the Beach volleyball, and this Ultima game, and a couple other games. And, I talked to him on the phone and stuff and told him I had the games. And for a while, he was like, yeah, I'll get them from you sometime and this and that. But we just kind of fell out of contact with each other. And the last time I talked to him, I told him that I still had his games. And he goes, you know what, you can just keep them. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't going to argue with the guy. But he basically bought this game brand new, played it for like a day, and then gave it to me, and then it was mine. So I never really have played it that much. I never beat it. I never really played it that much. So it was Kevin's, and he just kind of gave it to me because he liked Dragon Warrior 4 better. Golgo 13. My cousin and I rented Golgo 13, and I remember we thought it was kind of crazy because he gets busy, and the lights would go down, and you would see the chick in the silhouette, and you would see, and we're like, oh, this is kind of adult, we were thinking at the time, and it did seem more adult and kind of James Bondy, and I remember renting it a couple times, and I think I ran across a copy of it at Toys R Us for like $20, and I ended up buying it. And speaking of Toys R Us, I bought this at Toys R Us, Ninja Gaiden 2. We actually walked all the way up to this Toys R Us one summer day. It was probably about 4 miles. And like I said, Kevin and me and this guy named Davey, and I think one other guy went. It may have been Don. And we went and walked all the way up there. My mom knew I was going, but Kevin's mom would have shit a brick if she would have known. And we walked all the way up there. Davey ended up buying a CD player. I remember it was a big deal because he had to carry it all the way back. But he bought this CD player. And he bought, the Glory soundtrack. The movie from the soundtrack from the movie Glory. It was like that was his big CD purchase. But I ended up buying this at the Toys R Us, which is still there to this day. We'll see, because I think Toys R Us is on the ropes. But there used to be a Best Buy, and it actually used to be a Cross 40 highway on the other side, and then they moved to the other side of the road where the flea mart used to be, and then they moved again. So I bought that game. We went back and played it, and it's hard as shit, and I don't think I've ever beaten Ninja Gaiden 2. And then this is my final game from when I was a kid, and I remember getting it at Kmart, and that is Ninja Gaiden. My father bought it for me. We went there when I was down at his house. My mom and him were divorced, but he had visitation rights, and we would go down there on the weekends and stuff. We happened to go to Kmart, and I really wanted that Ninja Gaiden game, and I was back looking at the games and saw it on the pegboard back there, and we had money that we used to get for our grades and stuff. Our grandparents used to pay us if we got good grades. I never really got great grades, but I got okay grades, enough to have some money. My sister always had more than I did. And so we had bank accounts. My dad had started bank accounts for each one of us, and we had, $100 or so in there. And I remember seeing that game and saying, please, 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 Dad, buy this for me and take the money out of my bank account. And he eventually did. At first he was like, I don't know. And then he did. I remember I had the game for a full day. All I could do was look at the instruction book and the box and shit. And then getting home to where my Nintendo was, because we didn't take the Nintendo down to my dad's usually, or I didn't. And waiting to get home and not even wanting to eat dinner because I wanted to play this game, and my mom's like, you need to come eat dinner, and I'm like trying to play it, and I remember seeing the first cut scenes and stuff, and it just being really cool. So So this is my childhood. This is what I have left. This is it, and these are the stories that I remember from it. We're going to do this for the Genesis and the Sega CD, as well as the Super Nintendo. Other than that, I don't know for sure, because then we start getting into the PlayStation stuff, but I was already into my 20s and stuff, so it's not really childhood anymore. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for checking out my Nintendo past, and we'll see what comes in the Nintendo future, because this is still my favorite, most nostalgic system, and it's why I own the most box games for it, and I keep buying box games for it, and still love it to this day, even though it's so rudimentary and basic. It's still the best in my opinion, for all the shit and all the complaints of bad games and stuff. There's a lot of good ones too. So thanks, folks, and I'd love to hear some comments about some things that you maybe remember from childhood, or maybe if you actually still have some childhood stuff. Some people said they don't, or they may have like one or two things, but if you did and you can do a video, I would love to see it. I mean, I really would, because this is stuff that, you know, it just, you know, the memories, it makes me smile, but it also makes me remember certain things that piss me off and other things like that. So, like I said, folks, thanks for coming by, and we'll tackle another video soon. So.